RUSI New South Wales is an independent, apolitical, not-for-profit public education institute that, since 1888, has been promoting informed debate on and enhancing public awareness and understanding of defence and national security issues. We are Australia's oldest think tank. We conduct monthly lectures and seminars, issue a monthly newsletter, provide research support through our extensive military and historical library located in the Anzac Memorial in Sydney's Hyde Park, and together with RUSI Australia, publish a national quarterly magazine called United Service, with informed articles addressing the latest defence and security issues.
Please note, this monthly update presents the geostrategic situation as at the 10th of April, 2025. As often with these rapidly changing events, the monthly update can be out of date by the time the podcast is released. Great to say our friend David Leese is back on deck. David wrote most of this, but it does contain contributions by others of the Royal United Service Institute of New South Wales Special Interest Group on Strategy. Russia-Ukraine War. A further update on the rapidly changing situation in Kursk Oblast is warranted, as well as a look at the ongoing ground war in Ukraine itself. Kursk and Belgorod. It was reported on the 23rd of March that, by the 19th of March, Ukraine had withdrawn the last of its forces from Russia's Kursk Oblast to new defensive positions along the Sumy-Kursk border. While these defensive positions include a small foothold within Kursk, south and southwest of the Kursk provincial capital, Sudzha, Ukraine now will be unable to use its occupation of Russian territory as a bargaining chip in any peace negotiations. By the 29th of March, it had become apparent that Ukraine still holds some 80 square kilometers of Russian territory in several pockets within Kursk along the Sumy-Kursk border. Russia has launched a new offensive to eliminate these Ukrainian enclaves. Russians were also trying to make incursions into Sumy and may have seized one village. In response, Ukraine has launched a new offensive into Russia's Belgorod Oblast, which lies adjacent to Kursk Oblast. The Belgorod Oblast governor reported that more than 20 Belgorod villages along 150 kilometers of the border have come under attack by Ukrainian artillery, drones and ground troops. On the 29th of March it was reported that Ukrainian troops had penetrated several kilometers into Belgorod and heavy fighting was occurring in at least one village. Whether this is to gain Russian territory as a bargaining chip or to relieve Russian pressure on the Sumy-Kursk border is unclear. Kiev has not confirmed this Belgorod operation. Donetsk and Zaporizhia. Ukrainian forces seem to be very much on the back foot in eastern and southern Ukraine. Fighting is heavy around Pokrovsk in western Donetsk Oblast, although the rate of territorial losses since January has reduced. In Zaporizhia Oblast, the situation for Ukraine also is deteriorating. The number of Russian assaults using small infantry groups is reported to have increased significantly. Russians have advanced into the town of Sherbaki and heavy fighting is occurring in the area. Russia now holds some three-quarters of Zaporizhia, and Ukrainian military analysts estimate that the Russians have accumulated as many as 70,000 troops along the Zaporizhia front, plus hundreds of tanks and artillery guns. Ceasefire negotiations. Negotiations towards a limited ceasefire mediated by the United States so far have made little progress. President Trump has bullied Ukraine into agreeing to a limited ceasefire in the Black Sea and to a moratorium on attacks on energy infrastructure. Neither, however, have come into effect. Russia is playing along with negotiating, but is imposing conditions that it knows will be unacceptable to Ukraine and its European allies. Trump appears to be losing patience with Putin. Whether he will attempt to put Putin under pressure, as he did Zelensky, is yet to be seen. Many observers consider that Russia is using the negotiations to buy time while he seizes more land to improve his negotiating position. Gaza. Fighting continues across the Israel-Gaza border following the end to the recent ceasefire. The strikes killed more than a dozen women and children in Khan Yunis and Jabalia, according to Gazan sources. In Khan Yunis, the strikes on Sunday the 6th of April, 2025 local time hit a tent and a house in the southern city of Khan Yunis, killing 5 men, 5 women and 5 children, according to Nasser Hospital, which received the bodies. Journalist Islam Mekdad was among those killed. "My daughter is innocent. She had no involvement. She loved journalism and adored it," said her mother, Amal Kaskin. At least 4 people were killed, including 1 child, under 2 years old, in the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza, according to Gaza's health ministry. Another strike in Gaza City hit people waiting outside a bakery and killed at least 6, including 3 children, according to the civil defense, which operates under the Hamas-run government. In response, Israel's military said about 10 projectiles were fired from Gaza, but most were intercepted. Hamas's military arm claimed responsibility for the projectiles. Israeli police said some fragments fell in Ashkelon City, and the Magen David Adom Emergency Service said 1 man was lightly injured by shrapnel. Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday, the 7th of April, 2025 met with Donald Trump to discuss a ceasefire and tariffs for the second time since the president began his latest term in January. The impromptu visit could be the first effort by a foreign leader to negotiate a deal in person with Mr. Trump to remove tariffs. Civil war in Sudan. We have been following the civil war in Sudan since its inception 2 years ago. You will recall that Sudan is a country of 50 million people, and a civil war there, which has been ongoing for 24 months, since the 15th of April, 2023, has created a humanitarian crisis on a scale exceeding those in Ukraine and Gaza. The civil war is between rival factions in the Sudanese military government, the Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, under General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF, under Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, aka Hamedi. Outside powers, particularly the United Arab Emirates (UAE), the RSF's chief backer, and Egypt, which supports the SAF, are fueling the hostilities. Most fighting has been concentrated around the capital, Khartoum, and in the Darfur region in the country's west. Starting in October 2023, the momentum began to swing towards the RSF, which defeated SAF forces in Darfur and made gains in Khartoum State, Kordofan in central Sudan, and Al Jazeera State, which lies just south of Khartoum. Momentum, however, swung back to the SAF in February 2024, when the SAF made gains in Omdurman, a city across the Nile from Khartoum that forms part of Sudan's wider capital. Up to June 2024, intense fighting focused on 3 regions: North Darfur, where the RSF prevailed, Kordofan in central Sudan, in which the RSF gained control, and around Khartoum and along the Blue and White Niles, where the RSF also gained the upper hand. In June, the RSF made gains in Sennar State as well. By early July, the RSF had the upper hand in Darfur and Khartoum, with the SAF operating from Port Sudan on the Red Sea coast and seeking to challenge the RSF in its strongholds. By September, the SAF had made notable gains in Khartoum and Khartoum North. In September and early October, the SAF, which enjoys air superiority, began a bombing campaign targeting towns controlled by the RSF preparatory to ground assaults. In November, Khartoum remained the main focus of this campaign and involved grueling urban warfare. The fighting intensified in late November and early December in North Darfur as well as in Khartoum Omdurman. So far this year, the SAF has had the RSF under pressure in several areas. The major focus has been the national capital, Khartoum. The SAF captured Wad Madani, capital of Al Jazeera State, and then regained full control of Al Jazeera State, which lies between the Blue and White Nile south of Khartoum. This enabled the SAF to choke the RSF's supply lines to Khartoum. By mid-February, the SAF had captured most of Omdurman. In Khartoum itself, the RSF had held the presidential palace, the international airport, and several military bases since the beginning of the war. In late January, the SAF broke a long siege of its general headquarters in central Khartoum. Then, during March, the SAF progressively expelled RSF forces from most of Khartoum. It recaptured the presidential palace on the 21st of March and then the international airport on the 25th of March. On the 26th of March, the SAF claimed victory in Khartoum and the remaining RSF defenders withdrew from the city. Humanitarian situation and diplomatic efforts to end the war. As to the humanitarian situation, on the 2nd of May, 2024, a U.S. Senate hearing estimated that the death toll in this civil war could be as high as 150,000. As of the 5th of July, 2024, some 7.7 million people had been internally displaced, more than 2.1 million had fled the country as refugees, and perhaps up to 25 million, half the population, were facing starvation. The UN World Food Programme considers this to be the world's largest hunger crisis. More than half the population is experiencing crisis levels of hunger. Multiple areas are at risk of famine, and on the 1st of August, 2024 famine was confirmed in a camp sheltering hundreds of thousands of displaced people in North Darfur. By the 26th of February, 2025, famine had been declared in 10 locations and 17 were on the brink. On the 7th of January, 2025, the United States formally declared that the RSF had committed genocide during the civil war, particularly in West Darfur, citing a pattern of systematic ethnic violence in which the RSF has killed civilians as they tried to flee and blocked access to essential supplies. Much of this ethnic violence has targeted the non-Arab Masalid and other ethnic groups. In announcing the determination, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken imposed sanctions on the RSF commander Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo and other parties that have been providing the RSF with war material. There is no end to the war in sight. Diplomatic efforts to end the war have not been equal to the moment. Attempts to foster talks between the two warring parties have mostly stumbled just past the starting line. A crucial problem has been the failure of external players to push their allies toward serious negotiations. Western powers, including the United States, have sought to organize new talks, but with little success. The latest actor to take up the mediation mantle, Turkey, will need help to make progress where others have faltered. While the SAF now controls the capital and much of the north and east of Sudan, the RSF still controls Darfur and much of western Sudan. Some observers consider this may lead in any political settlement to a division of Sudan into two sectors. In Kenya's capital, Nairobi, in February 2025, political and military groups signed a declaration expressing their intention to establish a governing authority in the areas controlled by the RSF. The UN Secretary-General expressed grave concern over this move as it would further increase the risk of Sudan's fragmentation, but he welcomed a roadmap drawn up in Port Sudan on the 9th of February as it would facilitate discussions needed to rebuild a cohesive and unified Sudanese state. Civil war in South Sudan. You will recall that the so-called South Sudanese Civil War was a civil war fought from 2013 to 2018 between forces of the government and the opposition. The war was accompanied by rampant human rights abuses, including forced displacement, ethnic massacres, and killings of journalists by various parties. Since the war's end, South Sudan has been governed by a coalition formed by leaders of the former warring factions, Salva Kiir Mayardit and Riek Machar. The country continues to recover from the war while experiencing ongoing and systematic ethnic violence. The war had been ended by a power-sharing agreement in 2018 between the now President, Salva Kiir, and the now First Vice President, Riek Machar. On the 27th of March, 2025, Mr. Machar was detained by authorities and placed under house arrest. The Sudan People's Liberation Movement in opposition, SPLM-IO, Mr. Machar's party, immediately said that the arrest of Mr. Machar at his home in the South Sudanese capital, Juba, had effectively collapsed the 2018 peace deal and had taken the country closer to a second civil war. The United States urged the authorities to free Mr. Machar, while the United Nations, the African Union and neighboring countries all expressed concern. The immediate background to Mr. Machar's arrest is worth noting. In early March, members of an ethnic militia attacked a United Nations helicopter in Nazir, a town rocked by fighting between the South Sudanese National Army and a local rebel militia called the White Army. The UN peacekeeping mission was trying to evacuate a government army general and his soldiers when members of the White Army, largely from the Nuer ethnic group, shot at them, killing 28 people, including a UN crew member. The South Sudanese government, headed by President Salva Kiir, blamed the attack on Juba's main opposition party, led by First Vice President Riek Machar, and arrested its leadership, including Machar himself, either detaining them or placing them under house arrest. The event puts a spotlight on South Sudan's worsening interethnic tensions as well as the fragility of the 2018 peace agreement that mapped out a system of shared governance between Kiir's government, which is largely aligned with the Dinka, the largest ethnic minority in a country of more than 60 ethnic groups, and Machar's opposition group, the Sudan People's Liberation Army in opposition, the leadership of which largely hails from the Nuer community, the country's second largest ethnic minority. Whether South Sudan's leaders can avoid a second civil war now is uncertain. Civil war in Myanmar. Contrary to Sudan, we have paid much less attention to other current civil wars including Myanmar. Recent developments make it timely to revisit the conflict. As you will recall, the current civil war in Myanmar began in February 2021 after the Tatmadaw, Myanmar's military, staged a coup d'état against the National Unity Government led by Aung San Suu Kyi, which had been democratically re-elected the previous October. The Tatmadaw established a State Administration Council, SAC, to run Myanmar. Anti-coup protests then occurred across the country, and these were suppressed violently by the Tatmadaw. This led in turn to the ethnic armed organizations which had been conducting insurgencies from safe havens in border areas for many years to increase their operations in cooperation with the now exiled National Unity Government. By October 2023, insurgent groups were scattered across the country and the insurgency had made substantial progress. The Tatmadaw controlled only 40% of the country by area, although this included some two-thirds of the country's 330 townships. As an example, by then, the Chinland Defense Forces in Chin State, in western Myanmar bordering India, had captured the majority of the state, with a few holdouts in urban areas and along the India-Myanmar border. The Tatmadaw also had begun facing manpower issues, with desertions and low morale being extremely common. This coincided with a major offensive by the People's Defense Force and the Three Brotherhood Alliance in the west of Myanmar, which, by the 28th of November, 2023, had captured 80 SAC bases, 220 SAC positions and several towns. During early 2024, this pattern of insurgent successes continued, with anti-SAC forces, for example, besieging the state capital of Loikor, anti-SAC operations being conducted in northern Rakhine and Chin states, and the capital of Kokang self-administered area, Laokai, being seized, leading to fighting stopping in northern Shan state. Also, an Arakan army offensive was particularly successful in northern Rakhine. By February 2024, thousands of SAC soldiers, including 6 Tatmadaw generals, had surrendered without a fight. By August 2024, the anti-SAC forces had captured at least 12 district-level towns. On the 3rd of August, the Three Brotherhood Alliance and other resistance groups captured Lashio, the largest town in northern Shan state, as well as the headquarters of the SAC's Northeastern Command. On the 20th of December, 2024, the Arakan Army claimed to have captured the Tatmadaw's Western Command headquarters in An, Rakhine State, marking the second regional command to fall to ethnic rebels in 5 months. These anti-SAC forces' successes notwithstanding, the Tatmadaw continues to control Myanmar's main population centers. It has used terror tactics against the population, including burnings, beheadings, mutilations, war rape, torching villages and a massive aerial bombing campaign that has displaced nearly 3 million people. The Tatmadaw's forces are reported to remain formidable and well-equipped, and the SAC enjoys the support of external allies such as China. On the 28th of March, 2025, a 7.7 earthquake struck Myanmar with its epicenter near Mandalay, Myanmar's second-largest city. It proved devastating with massive loss of life. The SAC leadership immediately requested international assistance. Notwithstanding its rescue and recovery needs, it initially continued its bombing campaign in rebel areas. In contrast, the National Unity Government immediately declared a unilateral 2-week ceasefire. The SAC finally declared a 3-week ceasefire on the 3rd of April, 2025. That was the situation at the time of writing. The People's Liberation Army Navy and Australia. The People's Liberation Army Navy plan is now the world's largest navy by number of ships, 788, if not tonnage. The US Navy still holds that record, and has a global reach, operating from the Arctic to the Antarctic and through all oceans in between. There have been few visits to Australian waters, however, and when they have occurred, it has usually been by a single ship seeking to observe our military exercises and the like. Against that background, there has been considerable Australia media attention given over the last couple of months to 2 visits by ships of the plan to Australian waters. Not a little of this commentary, to put it kindly, has been overblown, but we have to expect that in the lead-up to a federal election. Fortunately, the powers that be have treated the visits, publicly at least, in a calm and professional manner. The first visit, as reported in the March Geostrategic update, was in late February and was by a naval task group, Planned Task Group 107, consisting of a Renhai-class cruiser, the Junyi, escorted by a Jiankai-class frigate, the Hengyan, and a replenishment ship, the Waishanhu. The Type 055 Renhai-class cruiser is China's premier surface combatant and capable of putting at risk ports, airfields, military bases, intelligence-gathering facilities, power generators, secondary industry and the like, as well as major population centres around the Australian coast, to say nothing of our coastal shipping. Several knowledgeable observers suggested that the task group may have included, or been accompanied by, a submarine. Task Group 107 passed from the Timor Sea through the Torres Strait, then tracked down Australia's east coast into the Tasman Sea, where it conducted 2 sets of live-fire exercises between Australia and New Zealand on the 21st and the 22nd of February, before turning west and tracking through the Southern Ocean and thence northwards through the Indian Ocean up the coast of Western Australia. At all times the task group was in international waters and did not breach any international rules. There was some controversy, however, as to whether the task group provided the customary advance notice of its live-firing practices, particularly as several commercial flights between Australia and New Zealand, while in flight, had to be diverted around the exercise area. Task Group 107 was tracked by Australian Defence Force, ADF, air and naval assets during this circumnavigation of the continent. Australian Navy Anzac-class frigates, HMA ships Warramunga, Stewart and Toowoomba, shadowed Task Group 107. The New Zealand Anzac-class frigate HMZ-NST Kaha joined in the shadow in the Tasman Sea on 21 to 22 February. There was later some controversy as to how well the ADF conducted the shadow, given that it did not give early warning of the live-fire exercises. A planned 3-ship task group had visited Sydney by invitation in 2019. Task Group 107's unannounced circumnavigation of Australia in February 2025, however, was a display of the plan's ability and willingness to project naval power into Australasian waters and showed that it could do so without the need for forward resupply bases in the archipelago, say in Papua New Guinea or the Solomon Islands. It would have been a valuable training exercise for the plan and would serve as rehearsal for the plan should it need to do something similar in a time of conflict. China, no doubt, also was keen to see how Australia would react. They would have noted that our response to such events needs much fine-tuning at both the political and military levels. For Australia, it should serve as a timely reminder of our current vulnerability to potentially hostile naval power. The Chinese ambassador to Australia, Xiao Qian, said on the 27th of February that such visits can be expected to occur more regularly in future, so we will need to get used to them. He said it was normal for a major power to send naval assets across the world and that there was no reason for China to pose as threat to Australia, as both countries remain as strategic partners. The second visit by the plan to Australasian waters occurred in late March 2025, when the Chinese research vessel, the Tan Suo Yihao, travelled from New Zealand waters through the Bay Strait and thence through the Southern Ocean along Australia's south coast to the Indian Ocean and then north off the coast of Western Australia. The ship remained in international waters and was not observed to break any international rules. The Tan Suo Yihao is a high-tech deep-sea survey ship which operates a small deep-sea submersible vessel, submarine. Apparently, the Tan Suo Yihao was returning to China after conducting joint scientific research with New Zealand scientists in New Zealand waters. Its submersible had taken Chinese and New Zealand scientists to the bottom of the Puasega Trench, 6.3 kilometers below sea level, for a joint research mission. The Puasega Trench is a deep cleft in the floor of the South Tasman Sea to the south of New Zealand. While it is not clear whether the Tan Suo Yihao conducted any research in Australian waters, analysts speculated that its submersible vessel could have mapped the undersea environment south of Australia, including a major submarine cable connecting Sydney and Perth. United States of America. Like those of us who have visited the grocery aisle and picked up a jam jar and discovered it was made in Poland. Poland. When we have fields of local strawberries and make excellent strawberry jam. Not high-tech, our grandmas made it in their kitchens. Donald J. Trump must have had a similar experience. Hence now he is all-powerful. Why not apply a simplistic solution, tariff all nasty imports of products that could alternatively be sourced in the USA? And by so doing increase employment and make everyone in the US happy. The rest of the world, well. Oh, that simple solutions prone to pop into dictatorial minds could be effective. Such solutions are usually not workable because the problems are complex. Free market world trade works like an organism in nature. Demand dictates supply. Supply gets tailored to meet demand requirements. Demand is fickle, changing with season, taste and a myriad of other factors. That is why many cost-benefit analyses fail to predict outcomes. Supply can be manipulated by less than noble actions, resulting in goods that are sub-utility quality or far in excess of requirements. Quantities can be manipulated to unnecessarily enhance returns. Ferrari cars are not utility items, great to show off your success if you are a drug dealer. OPEC ensures we pay premium prices for fossil fuels. Donald Trump has decided to wield tariffs as an all-purpose weapon to get other countries to do his bidding. He sees all negotiations as nothing more than expressions of power and competitive bullying. The tariffs in January 2025 on Mexico, Canada, and China were nominally designed to stop fentanyl and illegal immigrants coming into the US and China is just plain nasty. Donald thinks that since imports are subtracted from GDP they represent a minus or a loss. But imports also get added to consumption and investment, so they have to be subtracted so you only measure gross domestic product. Donnie's tariffs are causing the US to be in danger of becoming a friendless state. Some of America's strongest allies are rethinking their relationship as Donald Trump's isolationism threatens to entirely remake the democratic world. He seems to have this delusion that if you stop something being imported, it will magically get made in America instead and lead to more employment. Leaving aside the fact that manufacturing no longer employs human beings, only robots, that view misunderstands the complex network of supply chains that currently constitute global manufacturing. Complex products, such as cars and smartphones, come out of an intricate global ecosystem. Simple ones like non-technical toys and clothes are just a matter of competitive advantage, which can't be wished away. It's impossible to overstate the revolution that Donald Trump has brought about 2 to 3 months into his second term. Just 6 months ago, markets were on about American exceptionalism, obsessed with the booming Magnificent Seven companies: Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, Meta Platforms, Microsoft, Nvidia, and Tesla. Its economy, stock market, and technology leadership were the envy of the world. Now, the largest US bank, JP Morgan, puts the odds of a US recession at 60%, the Magnificent Seven have dropped 26%, the overall stock market has fallen back to where it was a year ago, and stories appear daily about how China is beating the US at its own technology game, including electric vehicles, drones, AI and robots. At least when Donald Trump slammed a 10% tariff on all foreign imports not covered by more intense imposts derived from a trade imbalance formula, Bangladesh gets 37%, supplies too many low-cost garments to the USA, he did speak kindly about Australia. And in the present climate that's probably the best we can hope for. Possibly a good thing the Prime Minister has not been over to visit. Look at what happened to the Irish PM, Taoiseach Michael Martin, just visited to drop in and say good day on St. Patrick's Day. Donald tore Michael apart for a very nasty crime committed by Ireland against the USA, that of creating a pristine education system able to deliver a workforce capable of managing the production of high-quality pharmaceuticals and joining the EU. Thus encouraging US pharmaceutical companies to set up in Ireland. Could have been equally bloody for the Australian leader guilty of our nation having in place nasty biosecurity laws damaging to US interests. Even Donnie's best mate Benjamin Netanyahu could not have the 17% imposed on Israel reduced when he visited on the 7th of April. Our defence ties at least got us some nice words.
This strategic update was produced by RUSI New South Wales Special Interest Group on Strategy. The SIG Strategy Group seeks to enhance knowledge of strategy, including the evolution of strategic thought, maintain awareness of current geostrategic issues, and undertake research on nominated issues of current strategic interest.